Have you noticed how much more distracted we've become lately? You pick up your phone to check one notification, and suddenly 30 minutes disappear while scrolling through your feed. You sit down to study, but your thoughts drift in every direction. You open your laptop to work, and before long, you're watching unrelated videos on YouTube. If this sounds familiar, it doesn't mean you have ADHD or any kind of disorder. In fact, it's far more common than you might realize. We now live in a world overloaded with stimuli, making it extremely hard to focus on just one task. There's always a notification, a video, a song, or a news update competing for attention. Our concentration leaks away like water from a cracked container. However, focusing on multiple things at once wasn't always harmful. Our ancestors depended on constant awareness of their surroundings to survive. This scattered attention helped keep them alive. But today, this same habit is harming us from the inside. Research from the University of California shows that it takes an average of 23 minutes for a person to fully regain focus after just one interruption. 23 minutes. Now think about how many times you break your focus by checking your phone, switching tasks, playing music, or doing something else. But what if there were a way to work around this? A method to train your mind to block out distractions and focus so deeply that everything else fades away. That method exists, and it's not a modern system created by an online productivity coach. It comes from Japanese Zen monasteries and is known as Ichigyo-Zammai. Ichigyo-Zammai means doing one thing at a time with complete attention. It plays a central role in Japanese Zen Buddhism, and that's what we'll explore today. Before continuing, I want to thank our new channel members for their support. I also appreciate everyone who likes the videos, leaves comments, and shares the content. You are a vital part of this channel's journey, and I'm truly grateful. Now, tell me in the comments, what is your biggest distraction right now? Your phone, social media, or your own thoughts? Let me know below. Back to the video. Jake Morrison was 16 years old when he realized he was falling behind in life. He wasn't a poor student, far from it. He understood math, physics, and programming. The real issue was his inability to focus. He would sit down to study, and within minutes, he'd be scrolling through Instagram. He'd open his calculus book and start imagining how great it would be to work at Google. He'd begin a video lesson, then pause it halfway to check a game score. Jake had a dream, one of those big, intimidating, almost unreachable dreams. He wanted to get into MIT, the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, one of the most competitive universities in the world, a place known for producing top minds. But there was a problem. His grades were nowhere near what MIT required. While other students consistently earned top scores, Jake stayed in the middle. AC here, a B there, enough to pass, but not enough for MIT. His friends often joked about it. Jake, you want to study software engineering at MIT, but you can't even get a B in math? You'll end up working at McDonald's. They laughed. They thought it was harmless. But Jake felt every comment deeply. What made it worse was the pressure from his parents. Not out of cruelty, but concern. They wanted their son to apply himself. Jake, you have ability, but you need to stop getting distracted. You need to take this seriously. Jake knew they were right. He knew he had potential. The issue was that he couldn't reach it. Every time he tried to study, his own mind worked against him. You know that feeling, when you should be doing something important, but your brain prefers imagining the future instead. Jake spent hours daydreaming. He pictured his graduation at MIT. He imagined his first job as a programmer. He imagined his friends admitting they were wrong. Meanwhile, the math book stayed closed. The physics homework stayed unfinished, and the dream remained far away. Then, after receiving yet another low score on a calculus test, Jake broke down. He was tired of being average, tired of letting his parents down, tired of the jokes. But instead of giving up, Jake made a different choice. He decided to ask for help. The following day, Jake went to see Mr. Tanaka, the school's math teacher. Mr. Tanaka was a Japanese man in his 50s, calm and composed. He carried a quiet authority that brought a sense of peace. While other teachers raised their voices to control the class, Mr. Tanaka only needed a look for silence to follow. At the end of the day, Jake knocked on the teacher's lounge door. "Mr. Tanaka, may I talk to you for a moment?" The teacher looked up, removed his reading glasses, and motioned for Jake to enter. Of course, Jake. Sit down. What's going on? Jake took a deep breath. Sir, I don't know what to do. I want to improve my grades. I want to become a software engineer, but I can't focus. When I study, my thoughts jump everywhere. I'm constantly distracted, my grades don't improve, and I feel stuck in the same loop. Mr. Tanaka stayed quiet for a few moments. Then he smiled, not out of sympathy, but recognition. Jake, may I ask you something? When you sit down to study, how many tabs do you usually have open on your computer? I'm not sure, maybe around 10. And your phone? Where do you usually keep it? Right next to me, with notifications on. And when you study, do you also think about other things? Planning what you'll do later, or replaying something from earlier in the day? Jake blinked. How did you know? Mr. Tanaka nodded slowly. Because I was exactly the same when I was your age. Jake's eyes widened. Really? Yes. I grew up in Japan, and when I was young, I struggled with focus as well. My thoughts were always drifting until my grandfather taught me something that changed everything. Jake leaned forward, curious. What was it? The teacher wrote a few words on a piece of paper and handed it to Jake. Ichigyo-Zammai. Jake stared at it, confused. Ichi, what does that mean? Ichigyo-Zammai, Mr. Tanaka repeated. It's a concept from Zen Buddhism. It literally means full attention on a single action. It's the practice of doing one thing at a time with complete awareness, as if you and the action are the same. Jake frowned slightly. So just focusing on one thing? It's more than simple focus, Mr. Tanaka explained. It's about becoming what you're doing. When you study math, you're not Jake studying math, you are math. There's no distance between you and the task. No observer. You're fully immersed. Jake still looked uncertain, so Mr. Tanaka continued. Let me explain it differently. Have you ever started playing a video game and suddenly realized 3 hours had passed? Yes, that happens all the time. That's because you entered a flow state. You were so absorbed that you lost track of time. Ichigyo-Zammai is learning how to enter that state intentionally with any activity. Jake felt a sudden realization. It made sense. And does this actually work, scientifically? Mr. Tanaka smiled. Yes. In modern neuroscience, this is often called mindfulness or flow. Many studies show that practicing focused attention can physically change the brain. It increases density in the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for attention control. He opened a drawer and pulled out several printed papers. I have some materials here. These articles combine Ichigyo-Zammai with behavioral neuroscience techniques. Take them home, read them, apply them, and tell me what you notice. Jake took the papers, his hands slightly shaking. He couldn't explain it, but he felt this would change everything. Thank you, Mr. Tanaka. Really, thank you. The teacher placed a hand on Jake's shoulder. You have the ability, Jake. You just need to learn how to direct your attention. Once you do, very little will stand in your way. That night, Jake barely slept. He stayed up reading the articles Mr. Tanaka had given him, and the more he read, the clearer things became. One article explained how the brain functions. Every distraction, every notification, every task switch forces the brain to use energy to reset and refocus. Repeating this trains the brain to become more scattered. Another article described the Pomodoro technique combined with Ichigyo-Zammai. Short blocks of complete concentration followed by 5 or 10 minutes of intentional rest. No phone during breaks. No social media. Just breathing, stretching, drinking water, and staying present. Another piece discussed choice architecture. Changing your environment so distractions are removed by design. Phone in another room. Notifications off. One tab open. One task at a time. Jake learned that Ichigyo-Zammai is about full immersion in the present activity without splitting attention. It's not just multitasking avoidance. It's a complete alignment between the person and the action. When you sweep the floor, you are sweeping. When you eat, you are eating. Zen monks apply this principle to everything, from simple chores to meditation. There's a well-known Zen saying that captures this idea. When I eat, I eat. When I sleep, I sleep. It sounds simple, but how often do we eat while thinking about work or lie in bed replaying worries instead of resting. Our modern culture encourages doing many things at the same time. Ichigyo-Zammai stands in direct contrast to this mindset. The principle is simple. When attention is divided, you are not fully present in any task. As a result, everything becomes shallow and incomplete. From this point of view, when distraction appears, and it will, the practitioner calmly recognizes it by saying, "My attention drifted," and then gently brings focus back to the current task. There is no guilt and no irritation. It is a steady practice of returning the mind to what is happening now. After understanding this, Jake realized something meaningful. He wasn't lacking discipline or motivation. He had simply never been taught how to properly direct his attention. From that moment, he decided things would be different. The following Monday, Jake returned home from school and did something he had never tried before. He created a routine. He placed his phone in a drawer in another room. He disabled all notifications on his computer. He closed every browser tab except one containing his study materials. He set a timer for 25 minutes. Then he took 3 slow, deep breaths. He started studying, and the first 5 minutes were extremely uncomfortable. His mind kept shouting, "Check your phone. Check if anyone texted you. Just open YouTube for a second." But Jake remembered what he had read. When distraction appears, you don't resist it. You simply notice it. My mind wants to drift, and then you gently guide your attention back to the task. He did this nearly 10 times during the first 25 minutes. In the second 25-minute session, the distractions became less frequent. By the third, he reached a level of focus he had never experienced before. When the timer went off, Jake glanced at the clock and was shocked. 75 minutes had passed, and he had accomplished more in 1 hour than he usually did in an entire week. He felt a rush of energy and confidence. For the first time in a long while, he felt in control. Over the next few days, Jake kept the ritual going. Every afternoon after school, the same routine. Phone away, space prepared, breathing steady, complete focus. He went even further and began applying Ichigyo-Zammai to everything. When he ate, he focused fully on eating. No videos, no distractions. When he spoke with someone, he gave them his full attention. When he walked to school, he noticed the sounds, the colors, and the movement around him. He realized he had spent most of his life on autopilot. And now he was aware. His friends noticed the difference. "Jake, you don't hang out with us anymore. Is everything okay?" Jake smiled. "Everything's fine. I'm just focused on something bigger right now." They didn't understand, but Jake didn't mind. For the first time, he was actively building the future he wanted instead of only imagining it. Then came the first math test after his change. Jake sat down, read the questions, and entered the state. Ichigyo-Zammai. He wasn't Jake taking an exam. He was fully engaged in solving the problems. When a teacher handed back the test the next week, Jake stared at his paper and stopped. He had earned an A. He had never received a grade that high before. Mr. Tanaka looked at him from across the classroom and smiled. Jake understood. This was only the start. The months that followed were intense. Jake continued practicing Ichigyo-Zammai every single day. His grades began to improve steadily. An A in physics, an A in chemistry, an A in programming. His parents were stunned. "Jake, what happened to you?" "I just learned how to focus, Mom." But that wasn't the only lesson Jake gained. He discovered something far more important. Discipline wasn't about forcing yourself through willpower. It was about systems. It was about designing an environment and a routine that made failure unlikely. He also realized that distraction wasn't the enemy. Distraction was simply a signal. His mind was tired, bored, or anxious. Once he understood this, he stopped resisting it and started working with his brain instead of against it. By the end of the year, Jake applied to MIT. His friends still made fun of him. "Man, you've improved, but MIT? That's unrealistic. Do you know how many talented people get rejected every year?" Jake just smiled. "I know, but I also know I'll give my best. The rest is out of my hands." He applied the same mindset to everything: test preparation, SATs, essays, programming projects, each task handled in its own time, with full attention. Then, 6 months later, on an ordinary afternoon, Jake received an email. "Congratulations. You have been admitted to MIT. He read it 3 times before it felt real. Then he shouted so loudly that his parents rushed into the room. I made it. I got into MIT. His mother cried. His father hugged him tightly. And Jake felt something deeper than excitement. He felt gratitude, not just for the acceptance, but for learning something more valuable than admission to any university. He had learned how to control his attention. And anyone who masters their attention shapes their life. Getting into MIT was an incredible achievement. But Jake quickly understood that being admitted was only the beginning. The workload, the expectations, the competition, it was an entirely different level. Still, Jake had an advantage. While many students struggled with distraction, procrastination, and stress, Jake relied on Ichigyo-Zammai. He followed the same daily ritual before studying. A clean space, phone put away, 3 deep breaths, and complete focus. He applied the method to everything: programming assignments, algorithm classes, group projects. Over time, his professors began to notice. Jake, your attention to detail is exceptional. You don't overlook anything. Jake had learned a fundamental truth. Talent matters, but attention is strength. Throughout his 4 years in college, he wasn't the most gifted student, but he was among the most consistent. And over time, consistency outperforms unfocused brilliance. Jake graduated with honors. Soon after, Jake landed a position as a junior programmer at a technology company. At that point, he could have taken it easy. He could have told himself, I've made it. Now I can slow down. But he didn't. By then, Jake had learned something essential. Everything is a process. There is no final destination, only the next step forward. So he applied Ichigyo-Zammai to his work. Every line of code was written with full attention. In every meeting, he was completely present. With each project, he immersed himself fully. Within 2 years, Jake was promoted to full-stack programmer. 3 years later, he became a senior programmer. By the age of 28, he was leading a team. His co-workers began asking, Jake, what's your secret? How are you so consistent? And Jake always gave the same answer. I'm not smarter than anyone else. I've just learned how to remove distractions and stay present, one task at a time, with complete focus. Now, you might be thinking, that's a good story, but does it actually work, or is it just motivational talk? So let's look at the facts. According to a study published by neuroscientists at Harvard University, regular mindfulness practice, which is exactly what Ichigyo-Zammai promotes, increases gray matter density in the prefrontal cortex. This means the brain physically changes. The area responsible for planning, impulse control, and focus becomes stronger. Another study from researchers at Stanford University found that people who practice focused attention experience up to a 40% reduction in activity within the brain's default mode network. This network becomes active when the mind wanders, when thinking about the past, worrying about the future, or losing focus. In simple terms, practicing Ichigyo-Zammai reduces the brain's distraction system. There's more. A neuroscientist specializing in neuroplasticity explained in an interview. The human brain is highly adaptable. When you train your attention consistently, you're not just improving a skill, you're reshaping neural pathways. You're building information highways where only narrow paths existed before. In other words, every time you gently return your attention after it drifts, you're actively strengthening your brain. This isn't mysticism, it's neuroscience. The Pomodoro technique, combined with Ichigyo-Zammai, has been widely used by programmers, writers, and professionals across fields. Why? Because it works. When distractions are removed from your environment, when you work in focus time blocks, and when you repeatedly bring your attention back, you are essentially training your brain. Just as muscles grow stronger through resistance, attention grows stronger through practice. Do you know what's most striking about Ichigyo-Zammai? It's not only about productivity. It's not just about getting more done in less time. It's about genuinely living. Think about it for a moment. How often have you finished an entire meal without really noticing the flavor? How many times have you watched a movie while constantly checking your phone? How many conversations have you shared with people you care about while your thoughts were somewhere else? We're often operating on autopilot. Life continues moving while our attention is elsewhere. Ichigyo-Zammai interrupts that pattern. It brings awareness back. When you learn to be fully present, your work improves, but more importantly, your life does too. Food tastes richer. Conversations become more meaningful. Experiences feel deeper. It's almost like stepping out of a fog and seeing reality clearly for the first time. There's another point that may surprise you. Research shows that people who practice mindfulness report significantly higher levels of happiness and overall life satisfaction. Why? Because happiness doesn't come from constantly acquiring more. It comes from being present with what you already have. Jake understood this, and it changed everything. So where is Jake now? He still works at the same company. He remains a team leader. But more importantly, he's no longer the same person he was at 16, the boy who couldn't focus for 5 minutes. Jake now teaches Ichigyo-Zammai to his team members, and he sees the same outcomes repeating. People who once performed at an average level now deliver outstanding work. Those who lived under constant stress now experience mental clarity. And here's the key point. Jake isn't extraordinary. He didn't have an exceptionally high IQ. He didn't grow up wealthy. He didn't rely on special connections. He learned just one skill that most people never truly develop: how to direct his attention. This is a truth rarely discussed. Success doesn't come from having more time. It comes from using the time you already have more effectively. It's not about having more resources. It's about focusing on the resources you already possess. It's not about being smarter. It's about being present. Because in the end, your life is made up of moments. And if you're not present in those moments, you're not truly living. You're simply watching life go by. If this video connected with you, consider subscribing so you don't miss future content. I also invite you to explore other videos on the channel. I believe they may be helpful as well. And remember, one thing at a time, full attention. That's how progress happens. Stay present. Walk with integrity. Follow the path. See you in the next video.